We got to get it out to the floor. Okay.
We're ready.
Okay, I will call to order the Judiciary Committee. I was in Judiciary, sorry. I will call to order the Senate Appropriations. I will call to order the Senate Appropriations Committee meeting Wednesday, February 21, 9 a.m. Clerk will call the roll.
Senator Anderson. Senator Garou.
Excused.
Here.
Senator Nethercott.
Excused.
Senator Salzar.
Here.
And Chair McKinsky.
Here. So we have a quorum. The first item for our consideration is Senate File 132, American Rescue Plan Act Appropriations Amendments. Sponsor, Senator Kolb. Welcome, Senator, and good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Kinski, members of the Appropriations Committee. I would like to present to you Senate File 132, the American Rescue Plan Appropriations Amendment 4. This is a rather complex plan, but I'll try to just give a very high-level overview of the intent first. The intent is to expend all funds to meet the deadline as efficiently as possible, so we have the least amount of reversions, people not being able to expend the funds, and then those funds going back to the federal government, which have already been appropriated and which will go other places, and us not spending this money will not change the fact there's this money. The money will go somewhere and be spent somewhere. So I would prefer that we spend it appropriately in the state of Wyoming for projects that benefit the state of Wyoming. And with that, I would call and phone a friend and ask that the governor's office come up and further run down the details and maybe answer some, very in-depth questions to the committee, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Hibbard and Mr. McKay. Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, Randy McKay, Governor Mark Gordon's policy director and longtime participant with the Appropriations Committee on this American Rescue Plan Act and its implications for Wyoming and the logistics of this federal act. So do just appreciate what Senator Kolb said of that there are impending deadlines that we need to deal with. And as the governor's written to you about, and I've talked to you about, we've looked a lot at what is happening with the federal act, the guidelines, and also the interplay between the state legislation that has been implemented. So just really appreciate you all working on this bill again, because as the guidelines changed on us around, I guess they were clarified by the federal government about what the definition of obligated is. And that's the key issue we're dealing with is that the federal government requires that all ARPA dollars are obligated. And as they define it, that essentially means under contract by the end of this year. So this is the last crack at getting these funds allocated and spent. So the governor has all along said these are dollars that are really borrowed from our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, so we should be thoughtful about how they're spent. And his letter to you on January 16th that outlined his ideas for how they should be spent were meant to be a conversation starter so we could look at what we know is eligible and get funds out and spent to try to benefit those future generations that are essentially paying for the American Rescue Plan Act. So with that, I can talk to you a little bit about logistics, or Director Hibbard can give you an update, but I think you've kind of got a good rundown on how many dollars we know are available today, and some of the ideas that the governor's office has for how to get these dollars spent.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. McKay before we go to Director Hibbard? All right, thank you. Director Hibbard, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Kevin Hibbard, and I'm the Director of the State Budget Department. Absolutely. Is that better? At some point in time, at the pleasure of the chairman, I would like to discuss some of the compliance and audit stuff, but I won't lead in with that. I'll lead into what I think is most important at this point in time. As of this morning, we calculated what we believe the redeployment amount is available is going to eclipse 50 million and approach 60, depending on how the rest of the obligations work here in the short term. And I believe everybody understands that the obligation date is December 31st, 2024. The expenditure date is December 31st, 2026. Meaning that all of these funds are going to remain in play, and we do have a compliance report dashboard, and I won't go into great levels of detail, but all the other funds, IIJA, IRA, everything else, we are using that platform for compliance and for audit preparation. And that will go into, it'll eclipse 2027 and go into 2028. Basically, the understanding is that this does not stop on December 31st, 2024.
Okay. Mr. Hibbard, 50 to 60 million currently available estimate. And previously we talked about by the time we get reversions and so forth, potentially as much as 90 million.
Mr. Chairman, I will put the sideboards 50 to 60.
Okay.
We did just recently receive a $2 million, or we anticipate, I believe the documentation's on its way for 2 million of those reversions, and that was included in the computation that I just provided you. It's a significant amount of money.
Okay. And then just to review, must be obligated by 12/31/2024 or we lose it. And once obligated, must be fully expended by 12/31/2026.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. And if you recall prior conversations, it's going to be a task, it'll be a lift for us to be able to get those funds obligated. I believe in the original House Bill 118, we had a conversation about the value of early versus late. And we arrived at, I think it was August in that bill for having all the obligations made so that we could go through all the transactions and requirements. It is a significant area of administration for us to make certain that we go through all the compliance documentation so we can make sure that we are in fact complying with the most recent Treasury's rule. So we don't want to get too close to December without having all this completed. And then we will suspect even after that point in time, we may have smaller adjustments later. And we want to make sure that we have the flexibility for all those. Flexibility is the key. You heard my testimony in the Joint Appropriations Committee. That's what we will ultimately need to do to where we can accomplish this. In the Joint Appropriations Committee, I did note that in CARES, if you recall, we prepared ourselves in a similar fashion. And it was actually after Christmas, before the new year. And we made some final adjustments, and we prepared ourselves for them under the CARES rules to make sure that we were in a position. And we did a B11, and that B11 actually brought in $8 million for the general fund, and also even more for that for the Hospital Association and the Department of Health. We did a significant amount of work at the 11th hour. I would like to think that we can do this in an orderly fashion and be able to get everything obligated. And if August is the date, we'll get that. If it's July is the date, we can achieve that as well.
So I have two quick questions, and I'll turn it over to Senator Guru. Obligated means what, under contract?
Mr. Chairman, yes, it's a little bit more extensive than that, but for the state of Wyoming, we need to have that physical contract in our hands. If we have a subrecipient allocation that's been provided to, say, a NAU, which would be a non-entitlement area or a local government or something that is operated in a subrecipient relationship, that meets the obligation expectations. We don't have to have that physical contract in hand, but we would like to have those agreements in hand just the same. And we would like to make sure that we went through those agreements and had the compliance.
Okay, and then this may be for you or it may be for Mr. McKay. the government fund recently added highways in as a permissible use. And the original draft of the bill said highway safety, but it's not highway safety, it's what with respect to highways? What is a permissible use with respect to highways?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct, it's highways, and it's $10 million or 30% of the SLRFA, which is the acronym that we use for the state and local recovery funds, or more commonly known as the ARPA Direct.
So only 10 million can be used for highways?
It's a $10 million threshold, and I believe that we can use 30% of the allocation per project, so $10 million.
Okay, so you got plenty of flexibility, gotcha. I'll turn it over to Senator Grew.
And it also requires skin in the game.
Okay, Senator Grew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kevin, and anyone, any one of you learned gentlemen can help me with this, but I'm interested in, Kevin, I look at you just because I know you know as much about this on the ground as anyone. I'm concerned about the dates. I want to make sure that the dates are sufficient. I worry about September 1st a little bit as far as the date goes, because you and I both know that, how shall I say this generously? The affairs of government, the execution of government gets a little wanting around Thanksgiving, between Thanksgiving and New Year's. People go on vacation, families, it just happens. It happens in private business, it happens in government. But at this in 24, between September 1st and December 31st, is a very important time for this legislation and ARPA dollars in general. So I'm worried about that. Are we going to be able to do the job we need to do in that time frame? And or is that time frame changed in this bill, contemplated?
Mr. Chairman, if I may just add some color, I think that there's two parts of the flexibility. One is, as Director Hibbard just mentioned, this week we had one project that had been previously authorized. They reverted their dollars back to the state. And so that is the kind of fluidity that keeps happening. And so I think that there's two parts of this, is that I think that there's the possibility that some programs may need beyond April 1st to see if they can get done. So sweeping the programs just because they're not finished on April 1st, I think creates one challenge. But the flexibility to work with the programs to understand their timelines, the existing ones that you all put in statute previously, and then also, but to be able to move the funds that are available, that we do know are available, the sooner the better. So there's kind of 2 points of flexibility. Yeah, I think the later you go in the year, I think we see more challenges. So if you, I really appreciate that you've looked at this, and as Senator Kolb looked at the draft of this, is, you know, earlier helps a lot. And in both ways, right? Not a hard deadline of April 1st for the existing programs, but to be able to start moving funds on April 1st or as soon as possible helps. But then if we don't have access to dollars to be able to get programs in place, Director Hibbard can talk to you a little bit about those challenges that would come at the end of the year.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
I agree with Senator Grew and Director McKay. September is probably, we don't want to go past that, right? Absolutely. Consider August, consider July, but I believe that what we're faced with is going to be a significant lift. And I really, through the experience that we had with CARES, we can sit here and we can confidently say that we need months in order to get this accomplished after the sweep.
So, Senator Grew, go ahead.
Just, okay, so we're still kind of honing that part down, and this is the other half of that question. So I'm a municipality or one of the receivers of money previously, and I'm just waiting for that last easement, or I'm just getting those last contract documents together. How can we be flexible enough to make sure that we're addressing those concerns that then Director McKay, you said it yourself. And so we don't pull the rug out from under anyone, but we also, and I hope everybody's out there, my WAM friends are listening, that it's not our intent to snatch the rug out from anybody, but on the same token, I also serve on Select Water. I watch how, we didn't get that last permit, we didn't get that last easement, so we're going to kick it back a year and add 10% to the cost, which is standard operating procedure in water, but here is deadly. If you agree with the premise that we all are working under, that a dollar sent back to Washington is a wasted dollar, and a dollar that we can deploy is a good dollar, which is why we're here, correct? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Looks like you stumped him.
Mr. Chairman, I agree.
Okay. Anything else, Senator Guru?
Mr. Chairman, just one last. As far as the flexibility, I think we need to understand that if something goes south after September and we get notification, we still require flexibility to figure out some other program to get there. So our eyes are on this. We're communicating. And even today's conversation, I think, is important for the public to understand that this is a practice that we need to make sure that we get efficient at.
So, Mr. Hubbersland, I wonder if you might just point out two things to us in the bill: the key dates and what he calls flexibility. I refer to it as the discretion that we vested in the governor's office. I do want to preface it by saying this. As originally structured, we had a round of grants, then we reeled money in and we had another round. That second round I've got an amendment, wipes it out. We're going to give everybody one quick grab, and then it's to the governor to figure out how to spend the money as quickly as possible. So key dates, and the reason I'm asking Mr. Hubbersland, the bill's confusing because for technical reasons, we have to pull in all the original language from these bills. And then we get down to the few areas where we make the amendments. So if you could just point out where the key dates are and where we've granted discretion to the executive.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Hank Oversland with LSO. So the first key date that you're going to see happens on page 23. This is where that you sweep those unappropriated funds and those reverted funds from 2022 and 2023. And that's as the effective date of the act as it stands right now. That would be page 23, line 3. It says, as of the effective date of this act. Right now, the act is slated to be effective immediately once the governor signs it. As it stands now as well, subsection D on page 26, line 4. Again, that's page 26, line 4. That takes anything reappropriated in section 4, and then on August 1st puts it toward those highway projects that you talked about. So that's August 1st. And then the final one is the next page, page 27. That'll be lines 11 and 15. Show September 1st, 2024, which is kind of what you talked about, the discretion. Mr. Chairman, as you know, though, you have the proposed amendment that you have proposed in front of you that would change a little bit of this, so I can go into that if you would like.
Before we do, I saw a reference to a couple of other dates I wanted you to clarify for me. Correct, yeah, on page 26, lines 1 and 2, you have July 1, September 1. That's saying anybody that comes in that previously received a grant that wants to try and step up to get it again, you better have it under contract by July 1 and show that you can finish by December 31, 2026, right?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that's correct. That's for the eligible water projects. And I think right now, as it stands, I want to say that the state loan investment boards, Mr. Chairman, rules October 1st, say that by October 1st, those entities that they granted to, the localities, counties, municipalities, joint power boards of those sorts have to have it under contract by October 1st, or it will come back to the SLIB So that's the date that they have in their rules. This legislation, as it stands now, that's in front of you, would put that to July 1st. So
And where is that?
the July 1st is that page 26, lines 1 and 2 that you talked about. The October 1st is in the SLIBS rules.
Okay. All right, continue then how we're changing some of giving the chief executive greater discretion in the proposed amendment.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so the proposed amendment changes it quite a bit. So as the table stands now, as the bill, sorry, Mr. Chairman, stands now, there's a table. What the amendment does is it recaptures all those funds as of the effective date of this act. And then it reappropriates it to the office of the governor and gives him discretion. But the legislature, the proposed amendment adds some priority to it. So the first would be the offset of Water One funds. Then it would be inflation funding, and this is only for Health and Human Services capital construction. And I believe the reason for that, Mr. Chairman, you can opine if you would like, is that was the only grant program that was offered inflation funding in 2023, and that's the only one that has emergency rules. Those are now expired, but that was, I think that was the rationale for only giving inflationary funding to HHS CapCon.
Well, I think OSLI said they can revive the emergency rules very quickly.
Mr. Chairman, I believe so, and
Okay.
looking back at them, I think that's correct, because they only had one iteration of those so far.
Okay,
The third is the offset of matching funds of local. I think when, you may recall back in January, you talked about this in JAC, for mostly sewer projects. The fourth priority is eligible highway projects. And then the fifth priority, in that order, is for the administration of the auditor in that contract, and then the grants management office that was proposed in the governor's January letter as well. And then finally on subsection C on page 2 of the amendment, lines 9 through 12, then keeps that September 1st, 2024 date in act. And then that's where the governor gets full discretion over using those funds. That those priorities aren't the same. The governor can use them on eligible ARP projects as he sees fit.
and just one more quick one, Mr. Haversland. Back to the top, where in subsection B, we don't call out an amount to be allocated to each of those priorities. That's absolutely within the governor's discretion, the way this is written, as I understand it, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. The way I read it is it says line 17 and 18 say in the following priority order. So the way that I would see it is that you have to make paragraph I full before you can move on to paragraph 2 for those supplemental funding. That's the way I read it. I don't know if that's the way they read it or would administer it, but it's a priority order. So, I mean, I think the number that we've heard is close to 20 million for Water One projects, but recall you revert almost 52 million in sections 2 and 3, and also have another 2 million that has come back since from Senate File 80 of 2022. So there's 55 or so million right now that is up for grabs.
So with that, I'll turn it back over to the governor's office and the budget office. Does that give you the flexibility that you were hoping for?
Mr. Chairman, this discussion was had in the Joint Appropriations Committee, and the final the outcome of that with House Bill 118 was not to list them as a priority, but to list them as qualified. I'll say that again, that don't list these as a priority where you have to fill one bucket to move to the next bucket, but just say these are qualified at the discretion of the governor. And then the auditor's office, just want to let you know that the administration aspect of this is in the state budget department, both of those administration, the AWAC positions, and also the compliance portal.
What do you think about that?
Mr. Chairman, I, of course, want to hear from everyone else, and I guess just to preface the conversation, everybody in here knows that the legislative branch is loath to not give its hand of telling
Fingerprints.
folks, fingerprints, and telling folks where and how to spend money. Sometimes we call it boot, belt, and suspenders. I think in the first floor here, as we're down on the first floor today, I think they refer to it as shackles and chains. So we're definitely unburdening you to a great degree with this, with the bill itself. And the bill goes so far, and the amendment takes it a good step farther. And with Director Hibbard's suggestion, it's going to take another step beyond that if we amend it to his liking. So the same question, just want to make sure. I mean, this is our last shot at this, so we've taken this bill around. It's like, is this going to get you where you need to be as far as from the governor's standpoint?
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Thank you. I would just note, one of the probably biggest challenges is going to be the logistics of understanding what's available and what's not. So that's why I think that discretion and flexibility that we keep talking about is so important, because we may know a number today, and if we were to try to be jumping around within those 5 buckets, that gives us more latitude to deal with the size of projects as well. So, today, what we know is for instance, $2 million showed up this week that was not contemplated when you all met last to discuss this. So, the amount of money grew. So that is the kind of thing, but it grew by 2 million, and you've got to figure out what would qualify within those 5 buckets for $2 million. So that's why flexibility is so important. And I will just note to defend this floor, administration of this really is key, right? Is if we can't fund the administration of this, we put ourselves at audit risk, we put ourselves at efficiency risk of trying to run this program. So that, in terms of where the buckets sit too, that's pretty important that we have the ability to administer this program first and foremost. But that's just an example. If you give flexibility, we can easily just take care of that.
So, further?
No. Thank you.
I intended, it's a good thing this hasn't been finalized, I intended to give greater discretion to the governor. So rather than serially, simultaneously, so that he can decide amongst these priorities how much he's going to put and where, and he actually could decide, I'm not messing with any of that anymore, and I'm just going right out to the highway department. And I'm willing to trust that he'll make a good faith effort to address as many of these in the priority order as he can. Go ahead, Hank.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think the way I read it, it's a pretty quick remedy. On line 17 of the amendment, I think all you would need to do is strike or delete in the following priority order and so it would just read, for which ARPD funds may be obligated not later than December 31, 2024, subject to the following conditions. I think if you remove the priority order, that it would get to what you're trying to do. Because, Mr. Chairman, I think this does give more flexibility in the fact that it doesn't put designated amounts to each project. As the bill stands now, it does with a table. So without putting exact projects, I think if you get rid of the priority order, you could get to that.
Where's the table, Hank? I didn't see a table in there.
There's no tape, Mr. Chairman, sorry. There's no table in the amendment. The table would occur on page 24, lines 12 through 17 in the bill. The amendment would get rid of that though, Mr. Chairman.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. So let's recap for Kevin. And we're not telling you how many dollars goes in each of those. We're not telling you that you have to fill them up serially. We're giving you the discretion to address them in good faith as much as possible and then move on to do what you think is best.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I agree with Eliso's comment. Basically, it would read December 31st, 2024 in the following or subject to the following conditions. And basically what you're doing is you're just striking the priority order.
Okay. Is that satisfactory?
And yes, and I think there's an obvious nature of the priorities that exist just for a normal individual to say, these are what we want to meet. And that was the list that the governor provided you originally.
Okay. So I'd turn to Senator Kolb and Senators Guru and Salazar. It's my amendment, but it's your bill. Are those kind of broad changes, giving that broad discretion to the governor? You feel comfortable with that?
Mr. Chairman, I do. I think it's just a reality on the ground of how to deal with this. And I think in this case, I guess I trust the governor to make the right decisions, and I believe he will follow the order as much as he can. But without this flexibility, it's going to be very difficult to fulfill this need of allocation. Thank you.
You good? Okay. Thank you. I'm not sure if I'll run the amendment on first reading. We'll give it a shot. Okay, anything else from the panel for the committee? Okay. Thank you, the three of you, and then I'll open it up for public comment. I would caution, we have 20 minutes, and if I'm gonna get this bill out to the floor and get this ARPA money dispensed, that we gotta do it pretty quick. Any further public comment? Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Josh Hannes with the Wyoming Hospital Association. I'll be very brief. And just for the committee's edification, we appreciate your work on this bill and certainly support. As it relates to supplemental funding for HHS capital construction, just want to let the committee know we have a number of projects who could certainly benefit from these dollars. They're either shovel-ready or already underway. They could have contracts in place to satisfy these requirements. Just wanted to make the committee aware that one, that we support, and two, that we have these projects ready to go. And I would stand for any questions.
I just thank you for that, and I just want to give you a heads up that OSLI for that inflation adjustment on HHS Capcom is going to insist on a firm bid in hand, so that they know, not an engineer's estimate, but a firm bid, so that your members know that if they haven't got a firm bid and they want to step up to this, they got it. It's not in the rules, but it's the way they're running it. So they better get a firm bid if they want to get an inflation adjustment.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, thank you. I appreciate that. And we do have a number of projects who have their contract manager at risk estimates going forward. Like I said, some of these projects are already underway. So we may have some that might not be able to satisfy those requirements, but certainly a number that do.
A CMAR estimate, they're not going to respect. It has to be a CMAR contract.
Right. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Yes, we have those. I was just trying to make the point that they were far enough down the road.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Darren Westby, Director of Wyoming Department of Transportation. Just appreciate the conversation from the Budget Office and the Governor's Office and your guys' conversation about the flexibility and the timelines for our agency. Assistant Chief Fulton and his team are frantically finding those projects that as soon as those funds get obligated, we'll get them finished on design, get them out the door as quickly as possible to meet that December 21st or 31st deadline on obligation. Just timing sooner rather than later, but I appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
So for projects in your STIP that are supposed to be 2025, do you sign the contract in 2024?
Mr. Chairman, what we, to meet the obligation or the criteria of the ARPA, we're looking at potentially years 4 in the STIP to bring them forward to get them, those projects completed, just to meet the criteria of the ARPA project.
But you have to have the contract signed for a project that currently is scheduled. You'll have a contract in hand by December 31, 2024.
Mr. Chairman, that's the reason for the flexibility on the earlier rather than later, because it takes time to finish those designs, get them out on the street, let them, award them, get the contract signed by the end of the year.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything for either of these gentlemen? All right, any other further public comment? I'm going to close public comment. It's to the committee. Second. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to vote yes in the committee this morning because I believe that we do need to have this debate on the floor. So I will be a yes today, this morning in this committee.
Okay, further discussion? Clerk will call the roll. Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I make a?
Turn your mic on. I'm sorry.
Can I do this amendment real quick? Or do you not want to do it right now?
I think I want to wordsmith it a little bit more. All right, thanks, Mike.
Senator Anderson.
Excuse,
Senator Guru. Aye. Senator Nethercott.
excuse,
Senator Salzar.
Aye.
Chairman Kinski.
aye.
Chairman Kinski, it's Senate File 132 with 3 ayes.
Thank you. We'll get that sent out to the floor. That satisfies our get this done by Wednesday obligation. We have a series of other bills on re-referral. Linda, you want to distribute those packets? So for those of you in attendance that are, for hear something other than the ARPA bill, today is Wednesday. It's the deadline to get bills out to the floor. This is the last day. They have to be reported out of committee in the House of Origin, which means all Senate files have to go through their home committee and re-referrals to appropriation. So we're trying to move these very quickly. For those of you who were here yesterday, we actually put them on a consent list to try and get them moved out to the floor. And with the one exception of one, the ad valorem exemption, I'm going to propose a consent list for my committee. I would propose that we consider on consent Senate File 63, property tax exemption residential structures. There are revenue implications that are indeterminate, but there's no amount in the bill as fiscal impact. Senate File 118, bighorn and domestic sheep. There's $100,000 in general fund and $50,000. And then SF 24, Public Service Commission, there's $0 on that. I would propose those as consent. I'm going to move that we consider those 3 on consent. Ask for a second.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes. Clerk will please call the roll.
Senator Guru.
Aye.
Senator Salzar.
Aye.
Chairman Kinski.
Aye. Okay, those 3 are reported back out to the floor. And then Senator Guru, briefly, you have a nice little bill here, Veterans Ad Valorem Exemption Amount. And I wonder if you might just give us a little bit of background on how this generates an $8.2 million appropriation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate File 89, the Veterans Ad Valorem Exemption Amount. If you turn your attention to page 1, line 13, where it says the stricken language is $3,000, which is the annual exemption for veterans. This doubles it to $6,000, which accounts for the fiscal note of $8.2 million. So that's the bottom line. It doubles the veterans exemption from 3 to 6. The cost to the general fund, cost of the general fund is $8.2 million. Glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Senator Salazar, anything for Senator Guru?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll vote yes to get this on the floor. I'll do that.
Okay. Any public comment? Public comment. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Chris Smith from the Wyoming Military Department, appearing on behalf of the Veterans Commission. The executive director is in DC for a set of meetings, or he would have been here, Tim Shepard. This bill adds an appropriation of 8.2, but it's already in the budget it's been costing the state $4-point-something million already to date. What this does is increase the value of the ad valorem from $3,000 to $6,000. The $3,000 was established in 2007, so it's been 17 years since it's been changed. It results in approximately $215 to $225 in the veteran's pocket each year. So this would increase that to somewhere between $340 and $400. It's not quite exactly double, but it's close. So with that, and the Veterans Commission is very supportive of the bill. We appreciate Senator Cooper and the other sponsors for bringing this bill. With that, I'll stand for your questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Salazar, go ahead. Please, no, please. All right. Any further public comment? Closing public comment. It's to the committee.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to declare a conflict on this.
Okay.
Yep.
Second, just We're not the committee of origin, so this just adds to the appropriation. Yeah, okay, so it's, and I seconded, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carew. Aye. And Chairman Kinski.
Aye.
And Senator Salazar is declared conflict.
Okay, I think we just want to go ahead and report it out with that vote, don't we, Mike? Yeah. Go ahead and report it out just with that. I don't want to leave the vote open. We want to get this out to the floor. Linda, thank you. And Mike, thanks for bringing this. It's a good little bill.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, this is Senator Cooper's bill. It was from a constituent of his, although I too, after it dropped, I did hear from a few veterans in my community as well that talked about the nature that the good general brought up about. It's been a long time coming, so.
Yeah, thank you. All right, that concludes our agenda.